And you will be getting a proxy in the next journal. It has to be in the next journal because the time, you have to have time to vote to get it back in, so we have it for the board meeting. So that is happening, that was planned. We didn't have, the way it's stated will be a little different because of all of a sudden this change of direction. We thought we were all going in the right direction, and then they said, oh, we got a temporary hold here. So we have to accommodate for that hold, and I think Tom has expressed that. So anyway, question?
Was that the direction of the state of New York?
That's the state of New York, not us. Okay, anyway, you got questions, and I see Peter has one.
This sounds exactly like the Democratic health plan.
I agree.
That's okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Peter, what planet have you been living on?
Yes.
I say that in jest, Peter.
Your explanation, I think, was very good in what you're doing, and obviously things are going on. The only thing is, I remember a few years ago, and of course, a few years probably is more than that, that we made a big thing to split the two organizations because it was a New York law. Now, you're telling me it's a New York law that is bringing us back together. Could you go into a little more details?
Yeah, I can give you a little more detail. Because we were not doing things properly, we were exposing ourselves to the possibility of takeover from outside or whatever. Because what was happening, in effect, was that a group of maybe 25 officers and members were gathering for the annual meeting and making decisions without notification of all the membership in the organization. And what could have happened is easily, this I recognized and looked at, some outside group or organization or whatever could actually have come by and paid the dues for 30 or 40 people and had them show up at our meeting. And they could have taken over the organization. They could have voted to move the artifacts to some other state or some other country or whatever, you know, whatever might happen. And this is why we had we corrected and had the proxy votes and everything. Now, when we had that first vote of all the membership or all the people that voted, I think we had 700 or 800 votes, as I remember, came in. There were only 8 objecting, so that it was sort of a false scare. We didn't have to go through that, but still we were exposed to the possibility of losing the artifacts, which are worth well over $1 million. So that was the reason. So it was important to do that at that time, but since everything is now corrected, we've eliminated that risk, and we can go back to, not go back to 25 people running the organization, but go back to the membership.
Plus, the Board of Regents, I believe, at that point had strict guidelines on how the organization should have been run, and the way the AWA was organized, it didn't fit their model.
Yeah.
So that's why the museum board was created, so it would fit that model at the time, so they could get the permanent charter.
There's an interesting,
Just to put that in
Perspective.
just put that in words that we used before, that I think most people understood, is that we had the museum, which was a chartered museum by the state of New York, being governed by a non-chartered organization, and they won't allow that. So you couldn't have the AWA Inc. over the AWA Museum. Wasn't allowed. So you had to have separate organizations. So that's what we did. We formed the AWA, Electronic Communication Museum, incorporated, but you never appended a museum title with incorporation. You just don't do that in the state of New York. So the AWA, Electronic Communication Museum, was a separate corporation running by itself, could not be governed by AWA Inc.
One of the things I want to mention, when we did the consolidation, we changed the name of the museum from the AWA Electronic and Communication. The problem is that's a mouthful, and it was very hard to put on stationery. It was, so the consolidated name for the museum is Antique Wireless Museum, period. Okay? And the reason for that is that took basically the name that everybody identifies with and kept it whole. All right? Now we have a legal opinion. I can see it.
No, on the contrary, I'm not licensed to practice law in New York. But I want to honor the question because the real problem, as I recall, and I still have some bruises from those days, was that there was a problem with the regents, and whoever figured out how to solve that problem and reintegrate the organization certainly deserves enormous praise and honor from us all, because it was a serious legal problem. We could lose the charter. And that's what had to be done, and that's why it had to be split the way it was, because we could lose the charter. And we saved the charter. And if we can reintegrate too, that's really wonderful, wonderful news.
Thank you.
Chris?
As long as you're dealing with paperwork, you know, the sign-up sheets for this meeting will not fit a standard envelope. And likewise, these little things we got here won't fit a standard container, a standard, what the heck? Pocket protector, whatever you want to call it. You have to.
There's actually a small removable strip.
They actually made it that way, but you had the same slight difficulty that I had. The tab on the end was meant to be torn off, and it should have been, and it wasn't, okay? Okay? I'll be over there. By the way, the comment that Bart made, the reason why that the museum, the club will fold into the museum is it solves the issue that you brought up. Because if it went any other way, it would have been a nightmare. So by doing it the way we did it, and this was by the direction of the attorney that Tom is referring to, and everything we did, and if Jeff and Tom remember, I was the guy dealing with the attorney, and I'm sitting there, and the attorney's sitting on the corner, and he says, "You must do it exactly this way." So I'm repeating to Jeff, "No, it has to be done this way." I'm telling Tom, "It's got to be done this way." The attorney's going like this. You know? We did everything exactly the way it was supposed to be done.
Paul Farmer, Virginia. Bruce, a simple question. Your little talk a moment ago about the terminology. AWM, Antique Wireless Museum. That will be the new name?
Antique Wireless Association Museum.
So it's AWA Museum, it's not, which was Mr. Peterson's discussion in the journal. It's not AWA.
Antique
AWA.
Wireless Association Museum, AKA AWA
Got it.
Museum.
And before I give the microphone back to you, congratulations on the meet. As many of you know, I do an informal count of flea marketing spaces occupied for every meet I attend, which has been this meet for many years, and a lot of other meets around the country. And last year, my count was 88 spaces occupied at 10 a.m. Of the first flea marketing day. Today at 9:15, the count was 111. So that's a 25% increase. Congratulations to all of you and to Roy.
Did you hear that, Roy?
Well, don't look at me, look at
Don't let it
yourself.
go to his head.
Yeah, I'd like to make one comment about some of the work that Ed Gable did in correcting museum problems. There was a need for a museum guide or manual, and we have an excellent one. And some time ago, was it you that the secretary at the Board of Regents called up and couldn't find our museum guide, and we couldn't understand that because we knew they had it. We later found out that the head of the Regents kept it in his